Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar with our special guests from DUPR. We're really excited to have you here. This is a pretty hot topic issue, and we're just excited to get into this discussion here. So before we begin, we'll just quick do some introductions. My name is Jenna. I am the Customer Success Adoption Manager here at pickleball.com. And so I have the job of doing webinars and training videos and all kinds of stuff for our tournament directors and players. And I also come from a tournament director experience and pickleball player. And so that's just a little bit about me. And I'll let the rest of our guests introduce themselves. Christy, what is your role here? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey everybody. So my name's Christy Cook, and I'm the VP of Customer Success for Pickleball Play Solutions, which many of you may know as more like the easier name for us is pickleball.com. There's all kinds of divisions associated with pickleball.com, and one of those is the software division that we call Play Solutions. So pickleball tournaments and leagues and team leagues and all of that good software that hopefully everybody loves and can't get enough of. That's our division that we call Play Solutions.
And Sarah, what about you? Who are you and what is your role over at DUPR?
Cool. So first of all, thank you guys for having Caroline and I and the DUPR team to get to chat with you guys. This is pretty cool. I know you guys have done some of these webinars before and really appreciate how you guys just want to continue to educate the pickleball community. So we're really excited to be here. We're really excited to be partners with you guys and everything that you do. So first of all, thank you. But my name is Sarah Carpenter. I am the lead data scientist at DUPR, meaning I am on the team of running the algorithm. And my favorite thing that I've seen since this algorithm update, as somebody commented on one of the podcasts, the most controversial person in pickleball. So my friends like to give me a hard time for that one. So that's my current role.
That's awesome. Caroline, how about you? Hopefully not the second most controversial person.
Not at all. Thank goodness I don't have that title. No, so Caroline Lelf here. I'm the director of clubs for DUPR. So we, all the physical clubs and organizations have DUPR digital clubs. So I oversee the account management team for that. And then also I'm the director of minor league pickleball. So I oversee all the events and tournaments through the minor league pickleball scope. And a lot of that, because of what I do, is obviously everything DUPR related, right? So clubs and players all want to know about DUPR and the algorithm. So thankfully we have Sarah to explain a lot of that. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here to everyone. And so just so you guys know, at pickleball.com, our mission is to help players find the right fit, as well as tournament directors make good and competitive brackets. And ratings are a huge part of that equation. Obviously, with guiding player development, they give players a good idea of where they need to be, and they help shape really competitive brackets, hopefully. So DUPR, you guys have stepped into this space in a really big way with creating the algorithm. I think you've gone from being just another rating system to the rating system. So you've built that system, and it's become a widely adopted system across the pickleball world. And I will say you've also shown a really strong commitment to improving it as well. I feel like you guys are listening to feedback, to players, to tournament directors. And so good job to you guys on your marketing to get to this spot and your responsiveness to feedback. With that, we also know in any industry that change is really noisy sometimes. So sometimes the loudest voices are the most frustrated. So we're here today to unpack a lot of that. We're here to talk about that discussion, and really no question is off the table. So if you guys do have questions, there is a Q&A section here. You'll notice that not a lot are, you can enter your question, but it won't show up. It shows up for us on the back end here. So just so you guys know, before this webinar even started, we already had 100 questions. So please make your question, I would say, as generic as possible. Obviously, this is a live webinar, so we don't have time to go into, hey, I played person A and my rating dropped from this, right? So this is a live webinar. We can't go on our phones and say, this is why precisely. So if you have those types of questions, send those to DUPR directly. But if you have big ideas, algorithm questions, stuff like that, feel free to submit them. And we have somebody on the back end who is reading those, and we will try to answer as many as we can. But the other side of it is we can't also be here for 5 hours. So hopefully with this discussion, we'll be able to answer as much as we can. And let's go ahead and get started. First of all, Caroline, why are ratings important for tournament directors, for players, and how does that impact a player experience?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. So, you know, I'm a player. I've played pickleball for more than 4 years. I'm a tournament player, obviously play locally at the club. And what I've realized as the biggest part of what DUPR does, especially for tournaments, is we all play pickleball because we want to have fun. We do. That's why we play it. At the bottom of it all is because we want to have fun. We want to go do something that we enjoy. There's all these other benefits. In tournament play, the biggest part of having fun is having competitive games, not blowout games in either direction, but competitive level-based play. That's what creates the most fun, is when we know that we can step on the court and there's a chance we could win, there's a chance we could lose. It's not like, oh, they're so much better, they're going to kill us, or we're so much better than them, they have no chance. The most fun is when it's that competitive fun. And the ratings does that. Tournament directors are able to create divisions, to create play so that it's similarly level-based players on the court. And when there's similarly level-based players on the court, that's what creates the fun of the competition. And so that's what DUPR does. It really brings in an aspect into the pickleball space where players know that if they're going to pay money and sign up for a tournament, it's going to be competitive and it's going to be fun because it's going to be grouped by those rating levels. And that's really the basis of a lot of what we do. So
I love it. Christy, I think you were going to bring us right into to algorithm. Do you have a question about algorithm changes?
Yeah. So, you know, the fun thing is to, much like you, Caroline, I've been playing for a while. I even came from a tennis background. And so I know there's a big, you know, tennis community out there too of converts, let's call it. But, you know, one of the funniest questions I always get, right, is people like literally, I'm a visual person too, right, Sarah? But like when you think algorithm, like it takes you back to your childhood algebra days. Like, and some people, they literally just want to see it. Like I've got a friend of mine, we'll just call him Schnauzer for the time being, right? And he's a mathematician and he literally is like, I want to see this algorithm. Like, what is this DUPR algorithm look like? So like literally, let's just start simple. Like, how many pages long is this thing? How many people are back there working on it? Like, are they sleeping? Like, what's actually happening behind this calculation?
Yeah, good question. So no, we don't sleep. We just work all the time. We're, you know, always trying to optimize. No, we're a bunch of normal people, but we're nerds, pickleball players. So I also like the three of you guys like to play a lot of pickleball, way too much pickleball. But what is the algorithm? Also, like, algorithm's kind of a scary word, I think. Like it like sounds like this like very complex thing, right? Like an algorithm can actually be very simple. Like what algorithm means is it's just like kind of a machine kind of like takes something in and spits something out in a consistent way. And so that's what we're doing with every player. One thing that's really unique is that we have all of our players on the same algorithm. So whether you're a 3-5 person who just plays at your club, or you're a 4-0 tournament player, or you're Annalie Waters, you know, one of the best players, the best player in the world, you know, you're all on the same algorithm. And so the algorithm itself, it's this fine line of making it transparent, but also a little bit of a black box, right? We can't show all of our secret sauce. But yeah, probably around like 1,000 lines of code. Although it's simple, because we have everyone on that same scale and on the same algorithm, we kind of have to account for as many edge cases as possible. So yeah, it's more complex than people think. Doubles is hard, right? Like we don't have an eye on the court, so we kind of have to assume some things, and but it's a really fun problem to work on for our team.
Good. That's along with that, there's a lot of questions around, and we'll dive deeper into the algorithm and all the things around it too. So, but there's a lot of questions around the timing of scores. And Christy, I would love you to share your experience with what people are asking you as kind of a person with clubs on the order. So go ahead and talk about that a second.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, I think especially with this newest release, right, is the timing of when those scores go in. So if everything is really super interactive in terms of, hey, were you expected? I think there's this whole expectation piece now, right, that's been released that's part of the algorithm, which maybe wasn't there before. So you can explain that in a second. But it's like, now it's, hey, should you have won? Are you predicted to have won? And so let's say that I play in a league match on Thursday night, and those scores for the league match are supposed to go to DUPR. And then I'm playing in a tournament Friday morning, but the league coordinator, for whatever reason, didn't get the scores entered from the league Thursday night, and she waited until Monday to put those scores in. A lot of my players have been super concerned, right, about, what if I played on Friday morning, but that win that I did Thursday night would have impacted my rating on Friday. So then my expectation of whether or not I should have won or lost to said player on Friday, would that have really made that big of a difference in my rating?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm going to take this first and then let Caroline I'll talk through kind of the technical side and then let Caroline take the more social side of it. So first, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and just kind of explain how our algorithm works, but then also what the recent changes that we made and why this might have more of an impact. I don't actually think it does, but I can see why players might think that because of the change, it will have a bigger impact. So the way our algorithm works is a match comes in and your rating updates. So it's instantaneous, which is pretty cool. It's one of the most loved things, I think, about the DUPR algorithm is that you're at a tournament, and especially I love matches that come from pickleballtournaments.com because they come immediately and then you can see your rating update. And it's really fun. It's fun to walk around tournaments and see people seeing how their rating's going to update instantaneously. So that's really cool. So your rating's going to update after every match. And the way that it updates, that's what's kind of changed. So your rating every match, let's talk doubles. It's going to have 4 players. Let's say everyone is rated. And so there's team A and they have some combined rating, and there's team B and they have another combined rating. We look at those ratings. Let's say this team is on average a 3.0 and this team is on average a 3.25. We look at that and we say, okay, the 3.25 should win. But not only should they win, we expect the score to be X. Okay, so we have this expectation based on what the ratings are between the players. And then it's kind of up to each team to either prove that they are right around where they thought they were. So that means the score ends up being very close to the expectation. Or if one team, let's say the 3-0 team, they don't win, but they get really close. Let's say they lose 11-9. So they've proved that they are actually closer to that 3-2-5 team than what we thought before. And so we're going to move those ratings closer. Same thing for that 3-2-5 team. We actually learned that they're closer together to that 3-0 team. So we're going to move them down a little bit. And so that's the change. Whereas before, every time you won, you moved up, and every time you lost, you moved down. But now we're kind of just going a little bit more granular. We're able to fully use the data and move players based on the score of every match. So that's kind of my step back. Now I'll go back into the question of how much does the order actually matter whenever you're uploading these matches? So because we are instantaneous, that means that it takes the matches in and it spits it out, and then it takes the next match, and then it takes the next match, right? If we were instantaneous, then we could actually take all the matches and do them more all at once. But it's worth it to have this instantaneous feature where people can follow and see what's going on. And so what happens is I kind of like to think about them as Legos, right? You're building these Legos up to your rating. And while it could matter ever so slightly, the order that you're putting them in, kind of maybe to the 100th place or to the 1000th place, technically, could it be different based on how you stack these Legos? Yes. But is that a meaningful amount? No. So like Caroline was talking about, what's our goal at DUPR? Our goal is to put you around the right level. Okay. So we show 3 decimal places, which is a lot, but it's not because we're trying to be that precise. I don't think there's a difference between a 3.884 and a 3.888 or whatever that is, or even a 3-4-3, right? You guys are all around a 3-5, to be honest, right? Like we kind of group things in 0.5s in pickleball. So our goal is to try to put everyone around the correct level. And therefore, no matter the order that we stack your Legos, we're going to get you to the right level.
Okay, so let me kind of rephrase that. So my friend Schnauzer here, 3.2. And my friend goes out last night, Thursday night, plays Annalee Waters, beats her. That's probably the only time you're like, okay, maybe the Lego stacking, Christy, could impact Schnauzer because that didn't get loaded until Monday. But for the most part, the generic population out there who's playing probably right at their rating, or potentially maybe, which we're going to talk about, maybe one level up. But those Legos are not going to be such a big difference that they need to be worried that a 24-hour, slot for when those scores got entered, they can just simmer a little bit. Like, don't worry about that.
Simmer is a great word. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would agree with what Sarah said. Like, it could make a slight, tiny difference, but the overall of it won't. We obviously recommend from DUPR is to upload results immediately. The cool thing about pickleball.com, using you guys' software, it doesn't matter if it's leagues or tournaments, it can go up like this. Like I have been at tournaments. I was just at a tournament this past weekend, and on the one day that they hit that upload button, people were looking at their DUPRs on the way out the door because it is that instantaneous. So we do recommend to tournament directors, people who are doing club programming, like get those scores to DUPR ASAP, especially using the software pickleball.com that can be done so easily. But if something happens and there is a delay, it's one of those, look at the big picture. That's a tiny picture in your overall player view, right? So go up, don't try to minusculize it, but go up at 10,000 feet and really look at the overall of your play and your overall DUPR. And just those are those kind of tiny things we just have to let go, right? So
yes. And then Sarah, for those who are interested or fellow nerds, I probably would be one of these who'd be doing this. Actually, my mom probably would be too. She comes to all my matches knowing everybody's DUPR. We would love to know, we wonder, is there some kind of like a DUPR calculator? Or I kind of equate it to like a mortgage calculator where I can go online, see what my rate's going to be, and this is what my payment is, right? So something similar to that where you can say, team A is going to play team B, and here's our ratings, and here's your expected score. It just seems like there's a lot of uncertainty of what the expected score kind of is. And is there something that you are working on to resolve that, maybe like a DUPR calculator or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, we normally don't like to tell too much about what our future features are, but this one has been shared at least in some places already. But the answer is yes. So we are working on that, basically exactly what you described, of kind of this expected score tool, right? It's a tool for you to go in and see, let's say the four of us, and we should at some point try to make it happen. The four of us go out on the court and we team up, DUPR versus pickleball.com, and we see what the expected score will be. And now not only are we both kind of fighting to win the match, but we're also all trying to, outperform the expectation of that. And so honestly, when you kind of think about it like that, it's pretty similar to like this notion of like a golf handicap, right? It kind of evens the playing field, and everyone's kind of playing for something. Everyone's playing for the chance to improve their DUPR, right? I do want to say one thing with this expected score, and Caroline's going to talk about this a little bit more later, but I do think like everyone should use it. Like, I don't actually think everyone should use this tool, to be honest. Like, everyone should continue to play pickleball in the way that's like healthy for them. And some people that might be, you're very analytical. You want to know exactly what you're supposed to do when you go out there. And that's not necessarily going to put pressure on you. It's just more information for you while you're going out there. Perfect. Use the tool. If you're the type of person where you look at it and you're like, oh no, now if I, instead of letting up 6 points, I let up 7 points, I'm going to go down, and now you're tight the whole match, then maybe just let it be and go out there and play and just kind of trust your play. And so we're going to provide the tool because we want to provide what the players want, but we also still want players to like all still operate kind of like in the way that they do best.
I love that. Yes. And I can't wait. I'm excited for talking about some of this DUPR, maybe anxiety, for lack of a better word, in a little bit. So we are going to get to that in a little while too. But to keep kind of on the algorithm, there also is a few questions on reliability score and how that impacts your rating, or how much does it influence your rating?
It's a very good question. So the reliability score we introduced, it's probably been a year and a half now. We introduced the reliability score kind of as a secondary metric to your rating. So your rating is still your main thing, but the reliability is kind of like a description of like how reliable is your rating based on how recent are your matches and how many different partners do you have, and things like that. And so the reliability score itself actually does not go directly into the algorithm. I think a lot of people think that it does. It does not quite go directly into the algorithm, but the same thing goes into both the rating and the reliability. And that's just like, how many matches do you have and how recent are those? Okay. So the way that it works, this is one of the places that I'm going to get a little bit technical. So if you don't want to listen for this next 1 minute, then you can tune me out and go get some water. But I'm going to get a little more technical for just a second. So every match that you play has what we call a weight. Okay. And we calculate that weight based on different factors. Did a tournament upload this match, or did a player upload this match? Also, was it a best 2 out of 3, or was it one game? And then also, was it played today, or was it played 90 days ago or 1 year ago? And so, you guys can kind of all probably figure out like which types of matches are going to have the most weight, right? A match played today, uploaded by a tournament director, and like a 2 out of 3 or even a 3 out of 5, that's going to impact your rating the most. So then what happens over time, every single day, the weight of the match decays. Okay? So it becomes kind of less important every day. We take all of your matches, all of the weight, and we add them up. And so every player is the sum of each of their matches. Okay? So now let's say a new match comes in and it has its own weight. And then I have my overall weight of all my matches. What I'm going to look at, or what the algorithm is going to look at, is kind of like what percentage or what ratio of your overall weight is this new match. And that is how much we're going to move your rating for this one match. I like to think about it as like a pizza, and like, how big is this slice, this one match of your overall pizza going to be? And if it's a lot, right? Like let's say only have 10 matches, then this one match is actually giving us quite a bit of new information about you. So it's going to move you quite a bit. Whereas if you have maybe 100 matches, then it's going to be a smaller piece of the pie.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. With ratings, let's just say somebody is a 4.7 and there's another person who's like a 4.3, and together maybe their team rating is 4.5 range. Are ratings based off of a team rating, or like is the algorithm based off of your opponent's team rating, your team rating, or your individual rating?
Yeah. So this is actually pretty related to the last question, and also a very like big misconception about why players move differently. So one other thing that I will say about your last question is, generally speaking, higher reliability players are going to move less. Okay. So even though it's not directly related, it's very, it's pretty correlated. And so if a person has a high reliability score, they can expect they're more stable, right? We're not learning too much from every single match, but a person with a lower reliability score, we're able to get a lot of new information from every match. And so we're going to move them accordingly. So back to this question. So we have a 4.3 and a 4.7. So they are on average a 4.5 team. We're going to come up with the expected score just based on the average of their team and the other team. And then their team either overperforms or underperforms those expectations. If their team overperforms, both partners are going to go up. If they underperform, both partners are going to go down. So no matter what, both partners are going to move the same directionally, but the amount is not going to always be the same. that amount is not dependent on the rating itself, but it's dependent on that weight that we were talking about before, which is it's really dependent on how many matches does each of those partners have and how recent are those matches. And so sometimes if the 4-7 has less matches, they're going to move up more. Or if the 4-7 has more matches, they're going to move up less. And another thing that's really important here, I see on Facebook a lot, like my partners are getting the credit. Okay.
Yes.
My partners are getting the credit because I am much more stable and they're maybe more volatile because they have less matches. It's important to remember that not only are they getting more credit when you guys overperform, but they are also going down more every time that the team underperforms. And so if you're playing if you're playing competitively, most people are experiencing some ups and some downs within a tournament, right? It's pretty rare. Like, you really would have had to have like an amazing tournament or a really bad tournament to go up or down the whole time. And therefore what's happening, this person kind of with more volatility is experiencing that both on the ups and on the downs. So it's not that we're giving them more credit. We're just learning more relative information on that player in each match and adjusting accordingly.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing the nuts and bolts of all of this, just kind of putting that out there. This is so intriguing to me to understand. And I hope that this is going to be so helpful for people to just go back and listen to, because Sarah, you're right. I hear that all the time where like my partner's getting the credit or I got punished more for this. And that does make a lot of sense. And you're just going to move more if your reliability score is not the same. Caroline, I also hear about players wanting to improve their DUPR. What should they be focusing on? Playing more matches, playing up a level? We've been hearing about that on social media a lot. I'll just go play the higher level players and move my rating, right? Or maybe just focus on, playing more tournaments in general. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so several things. I think there's a misnomer in pickleball that just because the longer you play, you're automatically getting better, right? Like, we all have personal caps, so we're only going to get to be so high, so good, right? And at some point we have to understand that's probably where we're going to hang out for a while, unless we're really willing to put some big effort into really getting better. So that's one thing is for people to realize, like, it's not just going to be this upward swing forever. Like, we're all going to cap out somewhere. Number two is if you're wanting your DUPR to go higher, is simply become a better pickleball player. And that means go get better, be better, and then go find DUPR events, whether it's through tournaments or leagues or other programming, and actually show DUPR that you are better. I've been at a couple of events the last few weeks, and people come up to me and they'll be like, how do I get my DUPR higher? Why? I feel like I'm really a 3.9, but DUPR says I'm only a 3.4. And I'm like, well, how much data have you given DUPR so that it knows you're a 3.9 and not a 3.4? And they'll look at me and say, well, I did one tournament in the last 3 months. And I'm like, well, how is DUPR supposed to know that you're by doing one event in 90 days? So there's two parts to that, right? Is simply become a better player, but also you've got to play in competitive events that reports to DUPR, so that DUPR can have that new data on you so that it can respond properly. If you go get better for 6 months but don't do anything or play in anything that actually reports to DUPR, how would DUPR know you've gotten better the last 6 months? So that's really the number one thing, is most people that feel that they're underrated and want that DUPR to go up, a lot of times it's really just a lack of data, right? A lack of match history that DUPR doesn't have on you to represent that. The other part too is that I always like to remind people is that just because we play at a fun recreational level at one club, and we can't always assume that just because I tend to be a better player when it's just fun and I don't care, because I'll go for things, I'll do things that doesn't matter, right? Because it doesn't matter, we're just there for fun. And sometimes I'm like, man, I played so good, I beat some higher level players, but then go and put me in the tournament, right? And those higher level players are really actually playing the hardest they can play because they're wanting to win the tournament. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not quite as good as I thought, because this is a different setting. This is now a true competitive setting versus just having fun in the rec level where people will just do various things. So that's another thing to always remember is that DUPR is results oriented. So it's got to see the results in those competitive settings, not just where you're just out there having fun recreationally. But yeah, Sarah may have more to say about that too, on exactly how to improve that DUPR.
Yeah, no, I agree. Get better at pickleball, you know? It's cold, hard truth here. But, you know, I do think, right, there are people, and this is one reason that we changed the algorithm, is because in the previous algorithm that was more, in a way, rewarding wins and punishing losses, people got inflated or people got underrated, right? Based on that algorithm. And so now, kind of entering this new era, there are some people that we know are underrated or overrated, or a lot of people are correctly rated, to be honest, like people who have been playing at their level. And I like to describe people, I don't know if everyone would like necessarily like my definition of playing at your level. I think playing at your level means you're winning 50% of the time, right? Like Caroline said, you step out on the court and you feel like you can win or you could lose. A lot of people, right, sandbaggers, right, like to just know that they can go win. We don't like that, right? So with the previous algorithm, right, those sandbaggers who were playing down just for the sake of winning, their rating may have gotten inflated, right? Or we could have some people who are underrated. So unless you are truly underrated, right, then like playing up isn't necessarily going to do a lot for you. I think that a lot of people right now are kind of like obsessing over this idea of playing up to like steal DUPR points or like get DUPR points. That's actually only going to happen if you are either one, underrated, and two, consistently performing at that higher level, right? You might have a couple matches where you do overperform the expectation as the underdog, right? You're also going to have some times where you don't do that, and that can, you know, that'll just keep you at your level. This one's a little bit more of a social thing, but another thing that I've realized of like really just trying to think like, why are people really wanting to play up? I think one reason is because people want to avoid the feeling that comes from their rating going down when they win, right? If they play up, then they can go up with a win and they can go up with a loss potentially. They could also go down with a loss, but they're kind of like removing that category that they might go down with a win. It's more of like a security type thing with their rating, right? But here's the thing about how the expected score formula is created. It is created we have 8 million matches of all time, a lot of them coming from pickleball.com. Thank you guys for all of that data, truly, because they have like done a ton for DUPR and making DUPR ratings more accurate. But with all of those matches, we look back at them and we say, okay, what is the typical result when a 3-5 is playing a 3-0? Or when a 3-5 is playing a 3-2-5? What's the typical result? 50% are above and 50% are below. And so if you truly are consistently overperforming that expectation, that means you are better, right? But you shouldn't, just because you're the lower rated player does not mean that you should expect to go in and always go up, because half the time you're going to go up and half the time you're going to go down.
Okay, so I have a couple questions that I think would be pretty interesting. So one is, I've got this idea, right, that I'm better than I am. And I'm like, ugh, and I'm blaming it on my partner. They're bringing me down. If it was just me on the court, I could prove to everybody I'm better than everybody thinks I am. So guess what? I don't have a singles rating. I'm going to go enter a tournament, and I think I'm right now I'm a 3-5, but I think I'm a 4-5. I'm going to go enter a 4-5 division singles, right? And I'm going to win my matches. I'm going to prove to everybody. Now I'm going to have a 4-5 singles rating and a 3-5 doubles rating. Did the two talk to each other, Sarah? Like, what does that matter? Like, talk to us a little bit about the two ratings are separate, why they're separate. Do they talk to each other at all? What does that mean?
It's a good question. So while somebody very well could have similar abilities between singles and doubles, they also just as likely could not, right? So the two ratings do not talk to each other in any way. Our sport is pretty doubles heavy. There is singles, but actually like 90% of our data is doubles matches. So it's pretty doubles heavy. And I think most people probably play 90% doubles, if not more than that. Obviously, at the higher level, like at the professional level, singles is very well represented. And then it's becoming more well represented with younger folks. That doesn't mean there are obviously lots of players who play singles no matter what their age is. But they are different skills, right? Anyone who plays doubles and singles know that they're very different. Thank goodness for me that they're not connected, because I could not be a worse singles player, to be honest. So everything that I do is working towards my doubles game. And you know, really, if you're playing both, you're kind of training for two separate sports in a way. So they're completely separate from an algorithm perspective.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So all you guys out there who, you might be right. You might need a different doubles partner, but telling everybody that to go and get a singles rating, if you're thinking that in your mind, well, I'm just going to go get a singles rating and that's going to help my doubles. It does not work that way.
Correct.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this with kind of some of those players being stuck, and a couple scenarios popped up in my head about this. One, I have a few friends who play at 4.5, for example, and their ratings have been kind of stuck at 3.9, low 4.0 range because of the win-loss thing. And then other examples are, you know, as we were preparing for this webinar, I had a question come in about somebody whose rating was down to a 2.1 because they admitted they made some poor choices with, like Christy was saying, their partners in the past, and how do we get to a 3.0 rating just so that they could register for, you know, specific leagues and that kind of a thing. So is there some kind of a pathway where you can recommend to, you know, like, for example, those 3.9 players, if they were to go play in a 3.5 bracket, they probably would be accused of sandbagging because they're regularly 4.5-ish players. And so how do we get them where they need to be without those sandbagging concerns? And how long do you think it'll take for these ratings to stabilize a little bit there?
So it's a good question. First of all, I think people want like a 4-week plan that they can get online. I don't really have I don't have a 4-week plan for anyone, but the first thing that I want to talk about is taking kind of a step back and like looking at what our ratings are. And our DUPR ratings are your typical day, right? So you have all of these results over all time, and it's going to kind of listen more or care more about your most recent results. But it's just an average of all of your days, your best days, your worst days, your typical days. Okay. So we're all kind of like this like little curve, right? On our average day, we're here. But one day I was really, really good on this one day. Like, or even this one match, I showed that like I was playing like a 6.0, you know, I was so good. Or I also had a day where I was like, oh my goodness, I think I'm playing like a 3.0 right now. I can't even hit the ball over the net. Right? But neither of those are my typical, right? My typical is going to be right in the middle of those. And that's what DUPR is trying to describe. And I think a lot of people kind of get in their minds what their ceiling is. And because we all have a ceiling and we all have a floor, and they want their DUPR rating to actually be showing what their ceiling is. But that's just not what we're doing. We're trying to predict your typical day. Or yeah, we're going to describe your typical day because we are trying to be a predictive algorithm, and therefore we're going to predict that you're going to perform like your typical self on any given day. So while some players, let's say around a 4.0, it is very, very common for a 4.0 player to sometimes perform like a 4.5, right? That's just one level apart. Like that's absolutely a possibility. That doesn't necessarily mean that after playing at a 4.5 level once or twice that your rating should jump up to that 4.5. Are we going to move it closer? Absolutely. That's what we learned from the match, is that you were better than what we thought, and therefore we're going to move you accordingly. But it does take that consistent performance at the 4.5 level to get you there. And so if you are at that 4.0 level and you think you are a 4.5, okay, so what do I mean by that? Like, are you a 4.5? I kind of go back to, are you kind of equally winning and losing at the 4.5 level? If not, then you're probably somewhere in between. If you're only winning maybe 25% of the games, then you're somewhere between 4-0 and 4-5. But once you kind of get up to that place of like, okay, I'm truly competing, I'm winning 50% of my matches at this level, I should be expecting my DUPR to get there. It's not going to jump immediately, right? You do kind of have to trust the process. It's not going to happen in one tournament, especially if you're a very active player, right? Again, we're looking at all of your results. So just because you show something from one tournament, we need to consider your past history as well. So that kind of like stabilization. There's also the people like I described earlier who probably are a little bit underrated, right? That 4-0 who is already competing at the 4-5 level. They're going to move quicker, right? And it just kind of is going to depend on like their history and how reliable they are about how quickly that's going to happen. But it is going to happen every time that they overperform, which is going to be quite a bit, right? If they're a 4-0 playing at the 4-5 level and they're doing well, then they're going to be overperforming more often than they're underperforming, and their rating is going to drift up over time.
Yeah, I will say too, the friend that one of them that has been stuck at 3-9, she did play in a tournament a weekend or two ago, and her rating did go from 3-9 to 4-2, so it jumped 0.3 points in just one tournament. She played in women's and mixed, so it does go up. It is getting there just over the one tournament, and I do believe that she will keep increasing because of this new algorithm, and I think it'll be more of an accurate representation, at least for her example anyway. So for those who are underrated, I would really encourage you to just keep playing, play more tournaments, and let that rating even out to where it should be.
Can I break in real quick too, Jenna?
Yeah.
Anybody out there, we're talking a lot about ratings and partners and get better and all those things. And sometimes I think the simple thing is like, what does that mean? So if you guys, anybody that's interested, we're going to post a blog article. I promise you it'll be out there by tomorrow. We'll make sure we do this. But what do those levels look like? And you can Google this and find it. DUPR's got great blog articles. We've got articles on this, but when you say get better, what does that mean? Like, what does a 4-5 look like? What are those skills? Like, what can they do that a 4-0 can't do? What can a 4-0 do that a 3-5 can't do yet? And so we'll make sure we get a updated article out there for you guys who are looking at, okay, well then how do I get better? Because it is attached to a number right now, but there's a skill that you need to develop that helps kind of identify what those level players are able to do consistently on their normal day, right? As Sarah said.
Yeah, and another misnomer that happens a lot too is that someone goes play maybe at a smaller local tournament, and it is DUPR gated and it does go to DUPR, but they're like, I won my 4-0 division. I should be a 4-0 player. Like, why am I not a 4-0? My DUPR says I'm only a 3-7. And I've done this, and Sarah has heard this who knows how many times, but every time I look up the accounts and someone tells me that, I go, well, you did play at this small 4-0 tournament, but unfortunately, 5 of those 7 matches you played, not one player was over 4-0. So yes, it might have been labeled 4-0, but you really were playing against 3-5s or 3-6s or 3-8s. So therefore, DUPR doesn't, and I think I'm saying this, it doesn't really care what division you enter. It cares about the players you're actually playing with and against. That's what it's looking at. It doesn't know or care that you're playing at a 5-0 division or a 3-0 division. It's playing on who's on. It cares about who's on the court. So that's another thing too with players, to remind themselves, like, just because I entered this league or this tournament, it might be labeled this, but who are you actually playing against? That's the real thought about it. Like, I talked to ladies this weekend who came up to my desk at this event that I was at, and they were like, we played at a 4-0, and that was the exact example of that. Like, well, yes, you might have won that 4-0 tournament, but almost all your matches were against below 4-0 players. So that's another thing to remember, is to not get so stuck on that level that you played, but what is your outcome on the players on the court that you're playing with?
You bring up a good point. What do you think tournament directors should be allowing at these tournaments? Right now they get to control when they set up a tournament. They have the ability in the back end, right, to say, I'm going to allow players to play up. So that's the first choice they can make, is, are players allowed to play up? And the second choice they can make, right, is to what degree am I going to allow those ratings to flex? So what would y'all's recommendation be to tournament directors on how do they help players and these ratings and everybody get to a consistent point with how they're setting up their tournaments?
You go for it, Caroline.
Well, in my experience, I think there should be a max and a minimum. I really do. Like, I really do feel that tournament directors, maybe if the level is supposed to be 4.0 to 4.5, maybe they do put a cap of you have to be 3 point something minimum as well, right? To give for two reasons. For players is what they sign up for, they expect that to be the competition. So it keeps everything rounded. It's also best, the algorithm can handle whatever the people's ratings are, but it's also best to really get a real picture to play that level-based play. So I personally feel like we need to have minimums and maximums, to be honest. Like, I've ran tournaments, I've done events for 3 years now, and the way I do my events, I do that. And I feel players appreciate it. The competition stays real, like it stays competitive. So that's my personal recommendation there.
When you say that, let me give a perfect example. So let's say you're talking about your 3.0 bracket, your 3.0 division. You're saying maybe the minimum should be you have to be a 2.8 to get in, or a 2.7, and you can't be over a 3.51. So you're going to add a little bit of flex for that player who thinks their rating is wrong and they want to play down a little bit, and you're going to add a little bit of flex on the bottom for that player who really wants to try to play up, but you don't want, a 2.0 to be in, or a 3.0. Is that kind of what you mean when you say a minimum and a maximum?
Yes. Yeah. Like, back when I was running different events outside of minor league pickleball, like I would do 3.9 to 4.499. That way people that were on the cusp could enter that 4.0 level. Now, is that the perfect number? I think it's going to be variant tournament director, right? And I would really have to look at really in depth to know what would be that better number, but there has to be some form of minimum there. Yes, because that way you keep that competition fun and you keep it level-based play.
Yeah.
And adding on that, I think a lot of times directors will ask us like what's that exact range that you recommend? And I'll say as close as you can do with the number of bodies that you have, right? So if you have a lot of people, then, try even doing like a 0.25 range, right? I think as often as possible, sticking with like a 0.5 range is good, right? Like that's the levels of our sport. So maybe going like between 3.25 and 3.75, that's going to be like an on average 3.5 tournament, as long as you can get people there. And then, we don't want to, as often as possible, go outside of like 1, right? Like, think about that. That's like 2 levels of pickleball. Like that's very different. And so it's just not going to be as fun for the players that the further that distance gets. So as close as you can with however many people you have is going to be the best. And I think this actually goes into another one of the questions that we've been seeing a lot is like, what about the high level players? So they're not necessarily in any of these like groups. They're not in the 3.25 to 3.75. Like, think about like a 5.5 person in your local community. Do they have any incentive now to play a tournament? So the answer to me is yes, but I think everyone has their own goals. Some people's goals are truly to have their DUPR be as high as possible. Some people's goals are to be as good at pickleball as possible. Some people are to win tournaments. Some people are to have fun. Some people are to exercise. Everyone has different goals. So, every player can decide what they want to do. What I would recommend is to try to be the best pickleball player that you can be, right? Or, if it's a money ball, like go try to win the money ball and win some money, right? Let's say your DUPR drops 0.006 or even 0.01. Like, it's okay. You're going to be okay, right? That's still around the same level. But you do actually also still have the opportunity to go up. So, like, to be honest, the people who should be afraid of their DUPR dropping are people who are inflated, right? Because again, kind of going back to this notion of we are predicting the score based on typical results. So even a 5.5 versus a 5.0, you should be able to perform at a level of a 5.5 on average. Maybe in some of the matches, you might give up more points than you're supposed to. But also, if you are truly a 5.5, you are going to overperform those expectations in some of the matches too. And so, either if you're not doing that consistently, then either you're a bit inflated or maybe the people you're playing are deflated.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, as both a coach for many, many years and a psychology major, but is be the best pickleball player that you can be. And I think, Caroline, you said something else on a previous podcast I watched you do, which I thought was such a great comment. Be the best pickleball player that you can be, you guys, but within what keeps you healthy and whole as a person and keeps you with friendships and keeps you having fun. And I would imagine that most of you who came to this sport, there's two things that you said brought you to it. One was community and one was fun. And so the minute your DUPR becomes more important than your community and your fun, you might just ask yourself if you're out of balance a little bit with, focusing on, what is that rating? And if that's what keeps you having fun is, I want to be better, then by all means, absolutely, you should be doing it. You should be practicing and you should be watching that rating. But if you've stopped having fun because you're so focused on your rating, it might be a good opportunity for you to ask yourself, how closely should I be watching this? And to that point, I want to transition another quick question. So there's a lot of tennis players out there who've come to the sport, and they came from, if you're older and you were in tennis many years ago, you came from when tennis first adopted what they call the dynamic rating system. And it was like the first to come out with an algorithm, this whole computer-based algorithm where it's going to calculate in the background after every match. And the difference I think tennis still uses in that algorithm is that they don't show the players the 0.0004299, all the decimal points, and it's not as quickly updated, right? So you may have to wait in tennis for 3 months to know, did you move up or did you move down? And you're a 3-0 and that's all you know. You're a 3-5 and that's all you know. How do you guys Sarah, I know you guys have sat in back rooms, and talked about how much data should we show people? How often, how quickly, how dynamic? I mean, are you guys moving in the direction of more data is better and for people to see more? Or what's y'all's kind of philosophical viewpoint on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that a lot of people think that we show 3 decimal points for the sake of precision, meaning that there truly is a difference between a 3.245 and a 3.246. That's not the case, right? Those two players are the same. That's a coin flip. If they go out on the court, right, they're going to swap lengths. Okay, so it's not for the sake of precision or really having that many distinct levels. It's so that you can see what's happening. It's a transparency and experience thing of when you play every single match, you're just going to see how it affects you, because we do have some matches, right? If you are very close to the expectation, your rating's not going to move a little bit, or not going to move very much, but you can see that it did move a little bit, and you can see the direction that it moved you. And it is definitely something we're thinking about. Okay, is the amount that you get joy from seeing your rating go up just a little bit enough to overcome the sadness of seeing your rating go down just a little bit? Maybe not. And we're discussing that to see if we should continue to be, as transparent as we are. I think with all of this, I think everyone should take a little bit of a step back, right? And just kind of try their best to see their rating as their overall level and not to think too much. And obviously we are showing that, but it's just so you can track it along the way. But try to look at it month by month. How did you do this month, or how have you done in the last few months, right? You don't necessarily need to just look at the 0.003 that you went up or down in this one match.
100%. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Caroline. Go ahead.
Yeah, and what I would like to say is one of the things is, because I have been playing pickleball now for 4 years. I got in that. There was a bubble of time where I was hyper focused on my DUPR. I wanted it to go up and all that kind of stuff. But really, as Christy, as you mentioned, is pickleball is about fun. The way we keep playing this sport for years and years, not just this year, but for long, is to keep that fun in it. And DUPR is simply trying to, as we've all said it throughout this entire webinar, is to put you in that similarly skilled level with the players on the court. That's what it's the main goal of it. That's what I use really DUPR for, is to have players be on the court of similar level. So keeping it fun means that you know where that rating puts you, but you're just going to have fun on the court. And when people start going from that perspective, they actually become better players. They're not so tense. They're enjoying more. They're just accepting where we're at. As a society, I think sometimes we put these goals too high in our mind of where we need to be at, and we forget to just enjoy where we're at right now. And that is, I think, part of our pickleball for every player coming from different points is just enjoying where you're at. So maybe you're not quite where you want to be, but you got to enjoy today, right? Like, if all we're worried about is this future number and we're not enjoying today, then are we going to keep playing pickleball when we're so stressed about it? So that is one thing that I remind people, like, yes, you want that rating to reflect of where you're really at, but have fun today. That's really just enjoy where you are. Enjoy your competition where you're at today. And then as you move and as you get better, then that competition's going to shift. And those players are going to shift. So that is something that I'm always reminding players of, is just enjoy where you're at right now and enjoy who you're playing with on that court. And I really feel like when people keep it that way, then they can just look at their DUPR for what it is and not be so consumed by it at times. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing too. What I'm seeing online is when people post about the new algorithm and their rating going down mostly, they get called out quite quickly actually about, you know, a specific match, or, well, you only played people that were, you know, steps down from you, or you went down 0.005, like, really, you know? And so it is, I will add into that too, or echo that. Don't get caught up in the 0.005, you know, decrease that you had, or 0.001, whatever it is. Just enjoy where you're at and don't be defined by a number. Be more defined by your game and yourself as a person on the court, and how you are displaying yourself and how you are a good representative of the game instead of a specific number. So
a quick question on the rating thing too. So there's two kind of pieces on, if you're a new player, right? Obviously you guys getting matches, that's how you get a rating. But I know you guys have introduced something called a DUPR coach. So they're out there able to give provisional ratings. And I wonder if maybe you could just speak to, like, what exactly is that? And do you see a pathway at all where there could be experts out there where people are completely mismatched with an inaccurate rating? Will there ever be another way besides lots of match data to course correct someone's rating?
Good question. I think so. We want our rating to be as objective as possible, right? That's kind of an overall goal, is like, let's try to rate everyone in as fair and consistent as of a way as we can. And so before introducing DUPR coach, right, or even just rewind like a few years back, like, how was the sport rated? Most people were self-rated, right? And as we all know, most people think they're a little bit better than they actually are, right? We're thinking ceiling again. You know, so then we came in and we said, okay, let's try to make this objective rating system where we're looking at everyone's results. We don't care what your name is. We don't care what your age is. We don't care what your gender is. We just care how you're performing when you're playing out on the pickleball court. And so we're assigning ratings as objectively as possible. So now we introduce DUPR coach, and what it is somebody can watch you play, whether it's in person or whether it's a clip, and they can give you a starting point. Okay. And at that start, that's just where you start. And then you move very quickly, right? And so this does, like, we are introducing a slight amount of like humanness into this, but it's nice because those people, you know, most of those people are going to do a very good job, you know, assigning those ratings. They've taken courses. They have been in the pickleball space for a long time. They're going to assign a good rating to these people. But what's also cool is that the algorithm is going to self-correct over time. And so whether that person just improved quickly, or whether that coach rating was maybe a little bit off, the algorithm is going, especially at the beginning, right? We talked about low reliability players are pretty volatile. It knows how to self-correct very quickly. And so, like, for me, like, this algorithm's my baby, right? Like, I don't want these people that I don't know in Florida touching my algorithm, right? But I feel very safe knowing that the algorithm is always going to self-correct, and that including those provisional ratings and those coach ratings is actually helpful and accuracy improving for our overall system.
Okay. And again, that is for kind of new players who don't have a place to start. It's giving them that kind of provisional starting point rating. Do you see a pathway at all besides just match data to help course correct anybody that, I mean, does that even make sense in the industry to do that? I know everything is match driven, but if somebody's out there going, I don't know how to get where I am, I can't play up enough, or I can't play down enough, or what do I do?
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made for it. I think for the most part, people are closer than they think to what their actual level is, to be honest. To where, you know, maybe you're off, but maybe you're off by like point two or something like that, to where you really can correct that within a few tournaments or within a few club sessions. So I think we'd rather keep it again as objective as possible, just truly believing, even like Jenna was saying, like she saw her friend just very quickly be able to move, you know, so we do believe that it's going to happen. And so honestly, what we're going to focus on more is providing more opportunities for people to play. Right. And that's again where you guys come in, of like not only tournaments, but leagues and club events, just trying to be creative with different types of events to get people to be able to get more DUPR matches. And so I think sometimes a person could be assigned perhaps an incorrect rating based on some old data, and they want to be able to sign up at the level that they know that they should, but they can't because their rating is not in the correct range. You know, instead, you know, we should all be trying as club directors and organizers to try to come up with more opportunities for those people to play, perhaps in a more casual way on a weeknight or something, to get those ratings to be a little bit more representative of their level so that they can then sign up at the right level for a tournament.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, you guys. So, or play providers out there, but also players. Like I hear a lot of players to me, they'll say, I run leagues on my own on the side too. And I'll hear them say, oh, I'm scared of it going to DUPR. Like, and so they protect this rating, to your point, Sarah, earlier, you know, they're like scared to see it. And so they protect this rating so they won't go play. And I'm like, but that's the opposite of really what we're trying to do. You should be playing as much as you can, as many matches, get as much data out there. It gives you that reliability, and stop being so afraid of it that you won't even go play in an event. You know, and I think just doing stuff like this, educating people, trying to help them understand how reliability weighs in, you know, all that good stuff is good. So I appreciate you guys doing that. Jenna, are there any, I know we're getting close to our time. I'm sure you have a gazillion questions still coming in.
So I have 2 more questions on like the ratings that have been asked frequently. And I want to quick ask those before we jump into the live Q&A just for a couple minutes. So has DUPR considered splitting out mixed and gendered doubles? I know that's something that I get asked a ton of, you know, but my mixed is this, and it's such a different game. And what are I just want to hear from you guys. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And that's another hot topic, right? That's been around for forever, not dependent at all on the algorithm change. So definitely one of those things that we talk about a lot. So I have many answers to this. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. But one thing is while the games are different, especially maybe at a higher level, professionals, you know, could have more of a difference between their abilities. Most amateurs are going to be pretty similar in mixed doubles and gender doubles. They could, like, depending on their skill sets, you could absolutely be better at one. Like, I personally think that I'm better at women's doubles than mixed doubles, and I'm trying to improve my mixed doubles to get it to be as good as my women's doubles, right? But generally speaking, that difference is not going to push you into a fully different level, right? We're probably talking like 0.1, 0.2 difference in your actual abilities. That means you should probably still compete around, like, you know, let's say you're like more of like a 3-4 in gender and like a 3-6 in mixed based on your skill sets. Well, generally speaking, you should still perform around the 3-5 level in either of those categories. And therefore we're going to put you at the 3-5 level. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's actually really, really valuable for us to keep everyone's data together. Right? Like if somebody has 100 matches, okay, then maybe we could split those up. But for the person who only has 10 matches and we're trying to get them as accurate of a rating as possible, if we split those into like 5 and 5 or 4 and 6 or whatever, we're choosing to kind of like create these like separate bins of data, and having all the data in one place really improves the accuracy for every single player. And so we do believe that, like, yeah, you could be a little bit better at one, or maybe even you're right on the edge and maybe you should play 4-0 in one and 3-5 in the other. that's okay, right? Like maybe your DUPR is like right in the middle of those, and you can do that, right? Like our ratings are putting you in a general place, and then you should be like, a lot of times you can play in 2 different divisions based on your rating, right? If you're a 3.75, then you could play a 4.0 or you could play a 3.5. That's totally fine. You're not sandbagging, you're not playing up, you're just kind of playing right around where your level is. But we do plan to show this. So like I was saying earlier, like for me, if we did show this, I'm guessing that I would see that my women's DUPR is maybe a little bit higher than my mixed DUPR, and that I want to try to improve my mixed performance to try to become as like complete of a player as I can. And so what we plan to do is more of like this sub-score, kind of more like advanced analytics, where you can truly see just like breaking down by different types of matches. So like, here's how I perform at tournaments. Here's how I perform in club matches. Here's how I perform when I'm playing mixed doubles. Here's how I perform when I'm playing gender doubles. You know, even down the road, depending on the data that we're collecting, we can say, here's how I play inside. Here's how I play outside, right? So there's all of these different ways that we can break down and learn more about how we're performing in different types of scenarios that all form into us being one pickleball player, and that your overall rating is still going to be encompassed in your one DUPR. And then another fun fact that I've gotten to share a couple of places is that 20% of our match data is not mixed doubles or gender doubles. So it's something like 3 men and 1 woman, or like even 2 women versus 2 men. 20% is quite a bit, right? So we don't want to throw out that data. That's still valuable data. And to be honest, it's very valuable data because it's helping us put everyone on the same scale, right? Like it's helping put men and women in all ages on the same scale.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Another kind of hot topic issue that is brought up is age. So is age factored into DUPR? And if so, how? There's just a lot of people I find that are, we'll just say a 4.0 player, right? But can they hang with the 19-year-old 4.0 bracket at age 60? Not really, but maybe at age 60, they're more like a 60 plus 4.5 type player, right? So is that factored in at all to the ratings? And if so, how?
So another good question. And to be honest, it's so similar even to the gender question, right? So why do we have this discussion? It's because it is undeniable that there are physical differences, for example, between men and women, but also younger and older people, right? You have different physical abilities. And so what you're kind of describing is what we moved into. I already kind of mentioned before that there was a rating system before us that was self-rated. And during that time, there was this notion of like 4.5, 50 plus, 4.5, 35 plus, 4.5, 19 plus. And while it still exists, what DUPR is trying to do, and slowly but surely working to truly get everyone on the same scale to where 4.5 means 4.5 means 4.5. And so no matter what your age or gender is, you should be competitive. And if you are not competitive, if the 60-year-old 4.0 is not competitive with the 19-year-old 4.0, then one of those people is either under or overrated or both, right? And so we do use that, like kind of that 20% of like overlapping gender. And then another cool kind of fun fact is that 75% of our matches have an age gap of 10 or more. So again, that's like very valuable data for us to see how different age brackets can perform against each other and help us put everyone on that same scale. But you know what, the thing that's really cool about pickleball, and I think it's like one of the most beautiful things about pickleball that we all love, is that you really can put so many different types of people and demographics out on the pickleball court, and they can be competitive, right? It truly is possible that a 60-year-old can be competitive with a 19-year-old. I have seen it very often. And what they bring to the table could be very different, right? The 19-year-old might be faster, might have faster hands, reaction time, whereas the 60-year-old could just have better skills, better strategy, better consistency, right? So that's what's cool about what we're doing in DUPR. That's why we just look at the results, because we're just truly describing pretty blindly how you perform when you're out on the court. And so having everyone on the same scale like that obviously like does require that overlap, but we do have that overlap. And just as something to kind of give you guys that we're continuing to work on is we're really trying to work on like kind of maximizing those bridges when we do get these matches between genders and between age groups. And not only that, but also locations, right? Think like we're actually growing extremely fast right now internationally. And how can we make sure that a 3-5 in the States is the same as a 3-5 somewhere in Europe, right? And so we kind of have these bridges. Like people do play across these kind of isolated groups occasionally, and really leaning into like, how can we make the most of all this data and as accurately as possible put people on the same scale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when you're talking about the age divisions, that's again one of the great things about pickleball. And my personal favorite was seeing, I think my son was 12 at the time, playing with my dad in a division. He was like, I don't know, 72 or something at the time. And it was just like, this is such a cool sport, right? To where my kid can play with his grandpa and win a medal in, I don't know, 3-5 or whatever it was at the time. And like, it was just cool, you know? So I just like knowing also the answer of, okay, a 4-0 is a 4-0 is a 4-0, right? So thank you for sharing all of this wealth of knowledge. I will go to Q&A now in just a second. And again, if you guys have any questions that you feel like were not answered already in this hour and 10-minute time span, we won't keep you too much longer. But feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We do have a moderator watching on the back end for us and submitting a few questions for us. But just so you guys know, there's 248 questions in there right now. So obviously a hot topic conversation, and this is something that needed to be done. So let's hop over in just a second to Q&A. Okay, so again, I think most of this is going to be answered, but let's just start out with, this is a good one. Talking about how and why do people have multiple DUPR accounts? And if they don't like their DUPR, they just open a new account and it doesn't seem right. So what are we doing about the duplicate account issue?
Good question. Yeah. And so I've worked at DUPR for like a little over 2.5 years now. And when I started DUPR, right, I think a lot of people who like play pickleball, it's like cool to work in pickleball and you like want to bring all of your ideas and try to implement your ideas. A lot of people, I think myself too, I'm like, oh, well, like, have you thought of X, Y, and Z? And they're like, actually, yeah. Right. So, you know, there's a lot of things that that a lot of us think about. A lot of people have like very good new ideas, but I do want everyone to know that we're thinking about all these things. We're talking about all these things. We're doing as much as we can. When I started, I said, I want to make DUPR as valuable of an experience, as good of an experience for the honest users as possible. And so really trying to like put in as much time as possible into like the algorithm and trying to make that as accurate as possible. However, honest users get really upset with dishonest users, and that also ruins their experience, right? And so there's this balance of prioritizing both of those things. And so we do take that very seriously, and that's part of my team's job too, is like the cleanliness of the data. And we do monitor it, and you know, we don't always catch it immediately, but we do catch it. We have what we call DUPR police, somebody on our team who's working through this stuff all the time and trying to look out for these people who might delete their accounts and try to create a new one. So we're not naive to the fact that like people are doing this, and we're trying to take as many steps towards cleaning that up as possible. But we do recommend, if you guys see people doing this, you should tell your club director, who can tell DUPR, or you should send something to support at mydupr.com, because we don't have eyes in every little pocket. Whereas we do have you guys in every little pocket. And if you guys are seeing people who are creating multiple accounts, then this would be a place where I would recommend tattletaling. We won't tell on you that you snitched, but yeah, no, it just helps, right? As everyone can kind of understand, just like I was talking about earlier with mixed doubles and gender doubles. We want to have everyone's data together. If people have two different accounts, now we're splitting their data. And honestly, I will say a lot of times when I see this, those two people's ratings are very similar on their two accounts. However, we do want to keep it as fair as possible, keeping everyone's data on one account.
Yeah. And I will add too, from just between our organizations too, we have a little spreadsheet that we share between each org. So whenever we find something, we're constantly sending it to DUPR. And whenever they find something for us, they're sending it back. And we've combined over 1,000 accounts with some of this stuff. So even just working together on some of this stuff, it has helped clean up some of this stuff. So I would love to keep working together with our community on that and call people out on it. Just I have a couple friends who didn't sometimes, and don't be mean, you guys. Sometimes there are people who don't even know. I remember when we went through the merge between brackets and tournaments, I ended up with, I think, 2 or 3 DUPRs. I knew somebody else that ended up with like 5 DUPRs. The people that I knew were not doing it on purpose. It was like, wait a minute, how did that happen? So we just get those cleaned up a second. So don't always assume the worst in people. Sometimes, yes, they do this on purpose, but sometimes there's just a random account floating out there and they're not aware. Okay, so multiple accounts, we addressed that. We did address the best way to increase your DUPR score. Okay, we're looking like we have... okay, can you guys talk a little bit about self-rating and or like where does your initial rating come from if somebody is coming into a match not rated?
Good question. Yeah. So because we are like instantaneous, we actually had a period of time. So if people have been like around DUPR and really following DUPR for the past couple of years, they'll know there was a time where if you played against somebody that was not rated, you kind of got into initialization period. And then that match did not count towards your rating. People did not like that. People want the matches that they play to count towards their DUPR rating because they're told that they're going to count towards their DUPR rating. So that was an improvement we made early 2024, is that no matter who you're playing, matches is going to count, even if a person is not rated. So then what we do is we just look at the overall level of the players, and then we also look at the score of the match, and we say, okay, based on the levels of these players and based on the score that your team got or that you got, we're going to assign you this rating. And that's just that's just off of one data point, right? One match. Now you have a rating. Most people, when they get their first rating, do not only play one match. Most people are doing a club event or a tournament. They'll probably play 4 to 5 matches, and they're going to be able to see their rating. It really will fluctuate quite a bit at the beginning. I mean, you could see your rating moving like 0.1 or 0.2 just from one match right at the beginning, because it's really trying to find that right level. And it's really impossible for it to know it off of one match. And I'm not even claiming that we have the correct rating for you after one match, right? Maybe after 5, we get closer. After 10, we get closer. After 20, we're probably pretty close now, and you're not going to be moving quite as much with each one. But we're going to show you what's happening along the way. And that's why we do display after every match, here's what you are, So that's more of a transparency thing. I will say it does take into account like the weights of all the players. So if you're playing against somebody that's not rated, it is going to affect your rating, but maybe not quite as much.
Philosophically, and so this is kind of, we've kind of addressed this, but there's a lot of Q&As about it. So I want you to just quick go over it again. Philosophically, why does DUPR believe there must automatically be a punitive aspect or outcome associated with every game? Why can't both teams gain points if the lower team is highly competitive in a game versus higher rated players? Why should a team ever be penalized for winning? And I feel like you did a good job of explaining, like, because I don't look at it as a penalty again, but if we're being defined, like I talked about earlier, we're defining ourselves by a number, and maybe somebody would look at that as a penalty, right? So just quick go over that again with a higher, underrated, overrated type of a thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And part of it we actually haven't gotten into yet. So the first question was like, why can't, like, let's say that the expected score is 11-5 and the the underdog still loses, but it's 11-9. So they've shown now that they're closer to the other team. And so what this person is saying is, why can the winner not either go up or just stay the same and the loser go up? Okay. And what happens over time in a system like that is everyone just gets inflated. If we're never moving people down, then the whole system is just going to like shift up over time and honestly become like pretty meaningless. And so we kind of have to keep this notion of like zero sum. One team goes up, one team goes down. We're pushing closer together. Another way that I like to think about it is based on what we're trying to do is we're trying to be as predictive as possible. So not only are we trying to predict the winner of every match, we're trying to also predict the score as close as we can in the future. And so if these two teams play and the score is closer than what we expected it to be, we're going to move the players closer together because next time we're going to predict a closer match, right? We're just using that to become predictively better. While we don't know for sure, it could be one of two scenarios. Either one of three really. Either maybe the higher rated person is a little bit lower rated than what we thought, or the lower rated person is a little bit higher than what we thought, or both, right? But we're always going to move both accordingly in order to maintain that kind of like balance of up and down. And if the person who underperformed and moved down, if they in their next match could very well overperform and go right back up. However, if they have consistent performance right around their lower level, then that's what's displaying that they should be going down. So again, so much of the talk about this is on the match by match level. And of course, that's where the change occurred, is at the match by match level. But again, you kind of have to zoom out and know, okay, in this match, you did slightly underperform. In the next match, you might slightly overperform. And now it just evens out. And I love what you said. And I didn't even tell you to say this about the like penalizing thing. Okay. So we are not trying to be a reward system. We are not trying to be a penalty system. We are trying to rate every player as accurately as we can, not in a personal way, right? It has nothing to do with who you are. It's just how you're playing on that one day. We're just going to adjust it accordingly. And you might move right back up the next day, or you might stay where you are. And that's going to be a better description of your ability. And it's going to help us predict the future in a better way.
100%.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is that the first letter of DUPR is D, and that's dynamic. And that's what players have to remember. We're a dynamic rating system. No one should ever be on an upswing just because they've won every match. That's part of the dynamic part of it. And on the flip side is also remembering, as Sarah has said many times, is for those that will win and go down, you're also going to be on other times where you're going to be the underdog, and all of a sudden you play someone that should have beat you pretty handily, and instead you play them really tight. You're also the same player that will benefit when you play someone tight where you were the underdog, and now you benefit from that going up even though you lost. So it's always remembering like, well, if it impacts me this way, it also impacts me on the flip side. And that's where players get themselves stuck, is they only look at one side of it, right? Instead of seeing the full picture and also seeing a whole tournament versus just one match. They got to look at the whole tournament and see both sides of that coin. So I'm always reminding players about that too. And then they kind of go, well, that is true. That makes more sense now. So.
And then I did just get a question in here about ratings for tournaments confusing with multiple tournaments. Using different ratings. So I just wanted to quick address that. It is actually up to the tournament director to choose the rating. They could technically choose a self-rating, or they could choose DUPR. I think like Pickleball Canada can choose the CTPR, Pickleball Australia. They can choose the Australian ratings. It's up to each tournament director to choose what rating they want to use. So based on that, sandbagging comes into play, because let's say a tournament director chooses to use a self-rating. My self rating might be set at 4.0. I don't actually know. I haven't looked at it recently. Don't go check. But my self rating might be 4.0, but my DUPR is 4.75. So if a tournament decides to use self rating, I might be able to enter as a 4.0. Is that right of me? No, probably not. But that's both on me and the tournament director, because they've made that decision to use a self rating and not to force DUPR ratings. So if that is a question for you, make sure you're contacting your tournament directors to ask what rating system that they're using, so that you can then decide what bracket you want to go in based on who's playing, right? So in a tournament like that, maybe you go down a level or something like that, right? So it's up to each tournament director to decide what rating system that they are going to be using. Let me just basing the predicted score on the team average ignores the reality that the weaker player will likely be targeted. How much thought has gone into factoring into the factors which can and should be considered? That's a tough question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So this kind of goes back to, I think I said at one point, we don't have eyes on the court. So we don't know if that happened. We don't know how active the higher rated player was. We also don't necessarily know, right? while it's true, you know, we're trying to create these most accurate ratings as possible. Is the lower rated player always going to be targeted, or are they always the weaker player? Or right, matches also depend on this, like matchups are a thing, right? Not even necessarily just like the skill, but like based on the way that these people are playing, who is seeing more balls, so on and so forth. We don't know how many touches everyone got. There is a potential in the future, right, that we're able to collect that data. Like that's a way that AI can be involved, of like, okay, this is how many shots each person got to hit, and this is how many unforced errors everyone made, and so on and so forth. And there's definitely potential that we could try to incorporate that in the rating. But until then, we're going to make basically as unbiased assumptions as possible, and kind of like make these like 50-50 assumptions, and know that, and it's hard in doubles. I've talked about that already. Again, it's hard. But what we do believe, and like Caroline was just talking about, was the law of averages. And over time, there are going to be times where one player, where you're the player potentially being targeted. There's going to be times where your partner's potentially the one being targeted. So because we don't have those eyes on the court, we have to make these assumptions. And those are things that we play with, right? We can kind of like play around with kind of weighting the team average based on the players. But what we have found is that it is most fair and accurate whenever we keep it at that 50-50.
And then, okay, a couple more questions, and then we'll cut it to a close here, because we're almost at the 90-minute mark here. But a good question I found in here was, how long are you hampered by your historic losses? Like, if you basically, what I'm interpreting that is, how long do you have to wait until those brutal losses are much less of a factor than you probably want them to be?
Yeah, and we kind of talked on this already. Everyone's different. It's all kind of based on your history and your match count and the recency of those matches, and you know how volatile you're going to be. But yeah, I don't know. I think trust the process, right? Again, I can't give you a 4-week plan, but I do just know that consistent performance is going to reward you. So I think that you know, if you do feel underrated, right? I think that's probably what this person is saying. They feel as though they're underrated. I think there's a couple paths that you can take. Okay. You can either play at your DUPR level, and then every win that you get is going to push you up, right? Or if you do want to play up a little bit, again, I don't recommend playing up a whole point. Like that's not beneficial for anyone. But if you really feel competitive, like let's say you feel you're underrated at a 4.0 and you can compete at a 4.5. What again I mean by that is you can win 50% of your matches and lose 50% of your matches at the 4.5 level. Go play at that 4.5 level, and your rating is going to climb pretty quickly. So I can't just necessarily like prescribe like, oh, this is for sure what's going to happen. But those are the two paths that I would take. The other thing that like I think is good as often as possible is to play with a partner whose rating is as similar to you as you can. That's not always going to happen, right? But you do have a choice most of the time, like who your partner is. And, just from like my perspective of like creating these algorithms, that singles is obviously an easier algorithm to write, right? Like we don't have any of that like attribution of like who did better in the match, who should we like attribute more of the win or loss to. So when you play with somebody your own level, it actually makes it a little bit more like a singles, right? Because you're both at that level. We're not having to account for any of that difference, and you guys will both see, your rating kind of like grow or go down together.
Mm-hmm. All right, you guys, we are at about the 90-minute mark. I've plowed through many of the questions. A lot of them were answered in the beginning as well. So if we missed it, I apologize. There's about almost 300 questions now. So that's amazing and overwhelming all at the same time. So again, I just want to thank Sarah, Caroline, Christy. Thank you guys all for being here, for helping bridge this gap of understanding. And we're looking forward to some of the updates as well, with where people can get a little more info on some of the projections of what they should be doing with their match. And yeah, I just maybe reiterate, like Sarah was saying earlier, or maybe it was Caroline, I forget, but don't let that, like if you're somebody that's going to be overwhelmed by that data, don't make the choice not to use it. I'm one who I'm like, oh, sweet, more data, I love it, and I'm not one to also get bothered by a 0.007 loss in my DUPR either, right? Like, just go back and look at those past matches and see what those ratings were to know why you went down or why you went up. That's another question that I got via email, was people wondering about their specifics. And then when I looked back at their match history, and again, I don't know how the DUPR algorithm works, but I do know that if you're a 4-3 losing to a 3-7, your rating is probably going to go down, right? So just look at those past match histories. You can see exactly what people's ratings were. And when I did want to ask you that, actually, when I click on a match, is that rating their rating after they have played that match or going into the match?
So if before you click in, I believe it's their rating after the match. Then once you click in, you'll see the before and after. Okay. But I want to say a couple of things, like what you were just saying too. You're kind of talking about like zooming out and like looking at your own player history. I also think, like, similar to life, with this problem, it can be helpful to zoom out and like look at the other people around you and their ratings. And I do actually think with this algorithm, as you see some people in your community and that you play in tournaments, like, interact with this algorithm, I do think that we all know some people who are maybe a little bit overrated or underrated, and you guys should see this algorithm start to correct those people, right? And then also remember, kind of like I talked about at the beginning, what we are trying to do is we are trying to take all of our rated users of lots of different backgrounds and demographics, and we are putting them in abilities, and we're putting them all on one scale, okay? So I am not optimizing this algorithm to try to create as accurate of a rating as I can for Caroline or for myself or for Ben Johns or for any one player, right? And so I think we all get so focused like on ourselves and our own journeys, and that's great. That's the only thing that we can control is our own journeys. But I do think it's still important to like take that step back and just like see yourselves as part of this really big pickleball ecosystem that you are super lucky to get to be a part of. So
yeah. And just to add to that, you guys, like, if you do find yourself getting stressed, like today, if you're a 3-5, tomorrow you're a 3-5, and Thursday you're a 3-5, and Friday you're still a 3-5. And just like maybe you thought that tomorrow you were going to go to a 4-0, you were just as scared that the next day you'd go back down to a 3-5. Stop looking at those decimal points then. And if you're good with the fact that, you know what, for 3 months I might be a 3-5, And then, oh, wow, look, I went up to a 4.0. And so maybe you don't even also have to look at all the decimal points. Just think about you are what you are. It's a 3.0, 3.5, and look at it more of that rating level and not all those little decimal point movements. If you find that that's something that's kind of stressing you out. And then one more thing I want to add is all those questions. We want you guys, thank you for taking the time to do it, to ask them. And so what we'll try to do if we can even is we'll try to take all those questions. We'll try to curate them down if we can into just some typical, like, what's the main topic of these group of questions? And if it's something we feel like we didn't cover, we'll get Sarah and Caroline to maybe answer those on the side, and then we'll put those out in a blog or something, because we don't want you to think that we dismiss your questions. We know this is important to everybody. It's obvious, by the amount of questions we have, so we'll try to do our best to get those answered.
Good. Really lovely. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate you all. And yes, we will see you next time. And like Christy said, keep an eye out for those questions. We will have this webinar listed on our YouTube page probably, usually within the next business day. It's posted. Our YouTube is Pickleball Play Solutions. There's a link there for the playlist, and then you can go to the webinars, and then it will be right there. So for those wondering, you should also get an email with the recording as well. So again, thank you all, and we will see you next time. Bye.